he is someone who I did not know this, but they were like, when Pulp Fiction came out, he did so many things where people were like, I didn't know you could do that in a movie.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And they were like, now you can. Like, you couldn't, but he knows so much about movies that he knows how to break the rules in a way that it changes the rules.
Totally.
And I get that.
Changer, yeah.
But I said the same thing about him using the N-word. In Pulp Fiction, him using the N-word is like, oh my god, can you do that? It's like, wow, PC culture, and he's like doing this. Now it's just like, should you be using the N-word?
So I know you're saying your character is saying it, but who's writing the script?
Also, like, is it necessary for... Black people are called several things outside of the N-word.
Yeah.
They call themselves several things outside of the N-word. You used one in this one, colored man. So, very historical, boy, even, if you want. We just have other words, so if you're using the N-word now, it's not because it's envelope pushing or you're edgy. You're just like, I was a white guy who got away with it. Yeah. Are you ready?
Yeah.
When the spawn meets world. When the spawn meets world.
What up, bros?
What up, bros?
Are you gonna do that every?
I don't know. I'm trying to. I've been listening to a lot of Lauryn Hill. There's a lot of runs.
Ooh, yeah.
Like bros. Yes.
You want those runs? You want them? And welcome to your Bro Meets World podcast. When it's Bro Meets World.
No, now you got.
Wow, I really threw you off.
You know why? Because I was thinking about the runs. I was just like, did I go too far?
You didn't go too far. I loved it, but
when it's Bro Meets World.
Welcome to episode 49. I'm Ceej.
And I'm TC.
How you doing, Timothy?
You know what? I'm doing good.
Mm-hmm.
This episode...
I have thoughts.
It's one of these... I have to say, this episode, as soon as I figured out what episode it was, I had a certain perception of what I was going to feel about it. And then at the end of it, I was just like, wow, I just went through a lot of roller coasters of emotions of just like being on board and off board and on board and off board.
Yeah. I'm going to say the exact same thing. You just want to get into it?
Yeah, I mean, yeah. Let's just jump.
Let's do the tell me about it.
Tell me. Give me one more time. Come on.
I'm keeping all of this.
We just started season 3, guys. I'm rusty.
Ready? Keep going.
Yeah.
Go.
Tell me about it.
This is season 3, episode 3. What I meant to say. When Cory's emotions get the best of him, he catches Topanga off guard and tells her that he loves her. Topanga's evasive attitude confuses Cory, and he is left completely bewildered when she breaks up with him. In a B storyline, Turner's friend Eli returns and gets a job as John Adams' new media arts teacher. Okay, first thoughts.
First thoughts, I like Eli. At least in this episode. Like
I'm warming up to Eli, and I want to see where we go with it. Because right now, to me, I don't know, like his character seems a little caricature.
Yeah, sure, I get that. But
you know,
I have to say, I do like the idea that he's like a social justice person. Okay?
Yes. All right. So we're gonna go into there.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to do it for the first of all. I will say this is the episode with the iconic throwing of the jacket, and the moment he entered her bedroom, which we will come to,
problematic.
I see him throw the jacket, or I remember that scene of him throwing the jacket, and I will say that I was like, oh, this is a moment we're gonna come back to.
Sure.
Very, very often. So I'm really excited about that. Before we go any further, let's talk a little bit about our roll call.
I have to say, I started this episode and I was like, oh, I was wrong, because just last week I was like, they're not really giving Eric love interest anymore. And in this episode, here he is with some chick.
Well, so it's interesting because I think you're not wrong. I think this episode it was relevant.
Yeah.
But I think most of Eric's story arc overall will be school based.
Yeah.
Like this episode was kind of like Eric's. Which Eric is hot in this episode. Like I know you don't care, but I'm just saying Eric is working.
He has great hair.
He's working
His
the hair.
Is great.
The tucked in polo even's doing it for me. Like that's not a look that most people can pull off.
I like him in oversized sweaters, oversized Kurt Cobain sweaters.
Did I tell you that? I don't know if you You did not know me in middle school, but in middle school, I wore oversized sweater vests all the time because Chandler wore oversized sweater vests, and I thought Chandler from Friends was the coolest person ever, so I wore sweater vests.
I'm glad to know that a 90s Matthew Perry was your style icon.
Of all people, it was Matthew Perry.
Wow. And you thought like, oh no, it's the sweater vests that are making him cool and funny. That's wow.
But going back to roll call, in our roll call, we have Christy, played by Anastasia Horn. Christy, no last name, by the way, because we never learn her last name.
Eric doesn't know her last name.
Played by Anastasia Horn, who is from Kids Incorporated. Do you remember that show?
I don't.
I remember it kind of like, it was this early 90s, 91, 92 show. I think it was like even earlier than that, but like she was part of the remake in those early 90s. It was just kind of like Zoom or any one of those like compilation kids,
like Mickey Mouse Club.
Yeah, Mickey Mouse Club type situation. And she did other bit parts throughout the 90s, but this is like nothing really like outstanding. Sure. Kids Incorporated was her biggest thing. And then also, he does not have a name, but I felt important to bring up Guy with Flowers.
I was going to bring up the jock with the flowers.
Guy with Flowers.
I was very interested in getting your thoughts on him.
Okay, so let's get, like, I want to start just from there.
Okay.
So, because he kind of leads us into the characters in this episode, but most importantly, he's introduced when Sean comes in, and Sean sees Cory with flowers, and he kind of rips them away.
We have to, first, Cory tells Topanga, obviously.
Yeah, Cory tells Topanga that he loves her. And then Sean is coming through with all of this nonsense.
Yeah.
And he's just like, you never tell a girl that you love her. Now they're going to expect to hear it. They're going to expect you to be like this whipped guy, basically, is what he's saying. So for him, Cory saying, I love you to Topanga, he's not even really hearing about what the situation means for Cory and Topanga.
No, he's completely focused on himself.
He's only focused on what it will now mean for his dating life, as is Eric.
Although it seems to affect Eric more than Sean.
That's another thing that's really weird. It's like, Sean's like, oh my god, it's going to change dating in all of John Adams, and then we only see it affect Eric.
Yeah, Sean's with a different girl like every scene, so I don't see how it was really
Is he even with a girl?
No, I mean,
like, we hear him talk about his date that he went on at Chubby's, but we don't see it.
Yeah.
And so there's that. But basically, any attempts that Cory has to express that love outside of just saying it, Sean's all about knocking it down.
So he goes, he sees Cory about to give Topanga flowers. He grabs the flowers and says, Cory, what are you doing? And then Jock is walking by, and Sean like kind of throws the flowers into the Jock's chest, and he takes the flowers and walks off. And that's pretty much the end of it.
There is a comedic pause of him being handed the flowers. He has this like look of shock and amazement when they're given to him, and he just kind of walks off like, he kind of made his day. And I was like, it's kind of interesting, because when I first see that scene, I'm like, it's supposed to be kind of like a gay joke.
But it's not really.
It's
not, more so just like, it's interesting that a jock is like receptive to flowers.
Exactly. And it does seem like it made his day. And there's no real tension there.
It's almost as if to say, you're silly for assuming that like only certain people enjoy flowers.
Exactly. And I was fine with it. And then
later on, Sean's like, all right, you know what? I'm not really understanding this, what happened between you and Topanga. Let's act it out. Pretend that I'm Topanga. And Cory kind of recites, like, you know what he says to Topanga at Chubby's, which is, I have these feelings for you, and I love you. And this is in Turner's classroom, and the camera pans, and we see that everyone is outside the door listening to them, including the jock with the flowers.
Exactly. Well, he's front and center, and he's holding the flowers, and it's like he feels betrayed, because hearing Cory and Sean say I love you, or hearing Cory say I love you to Sean, now makes Sean's love token, I guess, of the flowers.
This is where we learned that the jock wasn't excited about flowers. He was excited about the idea that Sean gave him flowers.
Exactly. And he was kind of touched. And so that means a few things. One, if this was real life, what we are now saying is that there was a gay jock in the 90s who felt that someone was outwardly expressive to him, and he was down for it. No one else really made fun of it, but probably the only other out person, and he now feels seen.
Yep.
And that was just taken away from him. So there's that.
Sure.
On the other end, you have, from a comedic point, this season does a lot of
It really, like,
just edging homophobic.
it's just like I don't know where they stand, because they keep bringing up, like, LGBTQ characters in various ways, but it's never disparaging, like, it's never discouraging, or, like, they're never mocking or making fun of, but it's just kind of this tongue-in-cheek of, isn't it funny that they exist at all, kind of thing.
Exactly. And it's this comedy, or this keep referencing of them existing and their existence being funny, that is kind of borderline. Because again, there's no judgment. No one in school is just like, oh, you thought Sean was into you. No one, Sean doesn't say, I now have to avoid Billy in the hallways or anything like that. It's just kind of like accepted. He thought that this was more than it was. He's now hurt, but we're going to move right on.
I imagine that this is like 94, 95, like white liberal writers who think that they're like so woke, but that actually, like, they're still a little bit offensive.
Yeah.
Like a Joe Biden liberal. Like a, you know, like
A Joe Biden liberal.
Yeah, you're liberal, but there's some things that are like,
I'm totally a Joe Biden liberal is my new favorite.
Yeah.
But that all that is good. But I also wanted to just talk about who Sean is.
Yeah.
In this moment, starting with Sean. First of all, we get the introduction of idiot savant Sean.
Sean at one point speaks fluent French, which he says he knows because he's an idiot savant.
No, what he says is, "Oh, I'm an idiot savant." You didn't know? Like
it was this thing.
Sean, you were right. Ah oui, Cory, absolument. En ce qui concerne les affaires d'école, je suis roi. Where did you learn how to speak French? I'm an idiot savant. You didn't know that? Cool.
Never brought up again. And no, as far as the series go, it does come back later in the episode where Sean says something else in French. Cory responds, "What does that mean?" Sean's like, "I just speak it. I don't understand it."
Yeah, exactly. So I like that. First of all, always that bit of comedy. This is the writing that we love about Boy Meets World. But Sean's feelings on love, the expression of love, where are you at?
One of the first things I wrote down was that Sean's first concern is that all girls are now going to want to hear that guys love them. All girls are going to want commitment.
Yep.
And it just showed me that this is just another example of Sean being afraid of commitment in a way that's not directly about Sean being afraid of commitment.
That's a very good point.
So, like, when the idea of, like, him being with a girl who's pressuring him, or he feels the need to, like, say, I love you, I only want to be with you, I want to, like, do all that. Sean's not in the place, he hasn't been shown that to know how to give that. So I think that's where this is coming from, although him and Eric are quite shitty in this dynamic.
Oh, absolutely.
Eric more so than Sean, but we'll get to him.
No, I feel like it's equal. I mean, and I feel like what it's showing us is...
Okay.
The only thing I'm going to say is, what it's showing us is the male understanding of what it means to be in a relationship. Because if we're taking that for fact, these guys, you're allowed to do whatever you want physically. We saw last week him making out with all of these girls. Eric is in a situationship with Christy, and everything seems to be fine. The moment love is brought into it, like, it's fine if you're seeing someone and it's casual and it's all physical. The moment love is brought into it is when you are chained down. And there's all of these steps that you're supposed to do. And the guys want to avoid being tied down to that at all costs.
I had trouble understanding what the show's message was about that. Because, like, at one point in the story, they're like, oh, all women are going to want to hear that they're loved and that, you know, I love you and all that shit. But in the first scene, we're shown that the woman who got it told to was not receptive of it, did not like it. So it's almost like this conflicting thing of, well, that's not actually what girls want, only to end the show with, oh no, I mean, yeah.
Well, actually, I want to get on Cory and Topanga a little bit later, but right now, you're right. It's sending conflicting messages because what Sean says is, this is what all girls want. Even in that sentence, he's like, oh, Topanga's gonna be all over you. And she's not.
Yeah.
But then they show Christy is this person where Eric feels the need to say it. And Eric is like trying to backtrack and is like, hey, like my brother said it and it really ruined his relationship.
This is why I think Eric is shittier than Sean, because Eric actually goes the extra mile into telling a woman that he does not love, that he is in love with her, for what?
Well, so again, from Sean's perspective, this is something that all teenage boys have to do. And I'm saying that the show is making the argument that from the teenage boy's perspective, this is a requirement now. It's kind of like, I don't really know how to say it other than it's like, once this domino has been hit, all the other ones must fall.
Sean and Eric do seem to be in complete alignment that this is gonna like rattle the dating scene at
they also seem to think that they have no choice in it. Like Eric seems to believe that he has no choice but to do this. Yeah. And that's where I'm really bothered by, is there's this hidden episode or this hidden storyline of why Eric and Sean feel like this is the requirement. There's no exploration of that. It's just, hey, this is what you have to do. This is what everyone knows, apparently.
Maybe this episode is about a teenager's understanding of what love is.
I love that you say that, because again, that's where I want to go when we hit the Topanga.
Because it seems as though the reason why Sean and Eric are like, this is something we have to say because of this, and that, is because they're under this understanding that just the words themselves are some kind of like binding contract in a relationship of some kind, whereas what Cory is talking about is the actual feeling of being in love with someone, which is, however like impractical as it is for him as a teenager to feel that way, is coming from a much more sincere place than what Eric and Sean are doing.
Absolutely. So that brings me to the part of that I wanted to bring up of saying I love you in high school. Where are you at with that?
Every person I know did it. Every person I know probably have the same understanding of it as these children do. And very rarely has it been said since high school for people that started dating.
I'm just saying, so it was interesting to me because this is kind of an interesting time in Boy Meets World, because we are establishing dating.
Yeah.
Like dating, we did a little bit of dating last season, but now it seems to be more of central.
That was one of the notes I took, is that this episode starts with Cory and Topanga dating as if they've been together for fucking years. Like, they were really...
There's a lot to say about that, but like, it's them dating. Sean was seen on a date earlier, Eric seen dating, and there's this conversation of, now that we're at this age, we're supposed to be dating and what we're supposed to do. When Cory expresses himself, which I would say is smart to do, and be like, hey, this is where I'm at, it freaks Topanga out, because she's like, we're 14, as you should, because you are 14.
We've only been dating for an episode.
And for me, I guess there's just this discussion on the response to that, both from Cory, kind of by Topanga's reaction, and definitely from Sean and Eric, is you don't express your true feelings. You keep it to yourself, or else A, she gets all the power, and B, you risk being rejected.
The problem with your relationship is Topanga's got all the power now. What power? The power you give up when you say, I love you. But I do. I mean, what's wrong with saying how I feel? What's wrong with telling someone? Yeah. But look, the longer you can go in a relationship without saying those words, the more power you hold. It's in books, man. What books are you reading? Men are from Mars, women want to blow Mars out of the stinking sky.
But I think that's from the understanding that your true feelings they don't have the weight of being real. They're just like this, like, you know, once you say this, you lose power. And it has nothing to do with what those words actually mean. It's the lack of power that you lose from being able to emotionally manipulate a situation.
Absolutely. And I think that we didn't even talk about emotionally manipulation, which we should.
Which is what Eric is doing to Christy.
Absolutely. And it's what Sean is encouraging.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of where I was trying to get at with this, where you and I are having this discussion, is, did you ever feel that way? Like, what was your...
I mean, I think Boy Meets World definitely played a part in me believing that having a relationship was, like, should be your top priority in high school.
Mm-hmm.
I think that everyone is a little quick to say they're in love when they're not really sure what it means.
Which I love that you say that, and I love that this episode explores that.
Yeah.
Again, a little bit later I want to talk about Topanga's response, because I feel like for me, it's the most important part of this episode.
And I, like, even watching it, like, there was times where I was, like, really judging these characters, but I couldn't think of a single character that behaved in a way that I probably didn't, like, the way I behaved when I was their age. You know what I mean? Like, I was Sean, Eric, and Cory, and Topanga at one point in high school. So I can't really give them too much slack for that.
Again, without really dating in high school, it's hard. Like, I can kind of think of, like, when I'm older, but like, at 14, I don't think, like, the words "I loved you" were ever used outside of, like, friendship groups.
I mean, I don't know. I feel like if you talk to different people have different recollections of high school, but as far as I know, the hardcore coupling wasn't happening until, like, junior, senior year.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, underclassmen weren't, like, if they were dating, it wasn't, like, a super serious thing. If there was "I love yous," it was very, like, "I love you," like, very, like, little kid shit. Like, it had no, like, there was no, like, dating wasn't, we're gonna see each other on the weekends. It was we're gonna hold hands to class.
There was an understanding of the limitations
Yes.
that we had in our position.
Yeah.
And that's how I see it as well. Also, something that I literally have been saying it probably since I was 14, and I still say it now, which is that whenever I say "I love you," I understood that I'm saying it in the terms of what I am capable of loving at that stage.
Sure.
If that makes any sense. Which is to say that I understand that my definition of love and how I feel about love will change as I get older. What I'm saying to you now is that you are at the max definition of that for me.
Yeah. and that's one of the things I really liked about this episode, because it wasn't just Cory saying "I love you." He was like, this is what love means to me, just in case you're confused as to what I meant when I said this is how I feel.
Yes. Okay, that's perfect, because I want to talk about Cory's definition.
Sure.
Please do.
Okay. So, you know, Cory breaks into Topanga's room without consent.
Yeah, he does. She's like, "What are you doing here?"
He just jumps in. We've never seen Topanga's house before. We've never seen her room before, which is just the boys' room with the wall pushed in closer without the desk. And Cory says that his definition of love is, we've always been able to talk, I've always been able to make you laugh, and I always want to take care of you.
Eric came outside and started teasing us.
He said, "Cory loves Topanga." You said, "Yeah, I hate her."
That's when I knew.
Cory, we were only 6.
Who cares?
How could you know then? I'm not even sure I know what "I love you" means now.
Look, all I know is you and I belong together. I mean, I've always been able to talk to you, to make you laugh. And I've always wanted to take care of you.
But also, I just thought it was really funny that Cory said the thing about always being able to make her laugh, because, I mean, I've loved the show for a long time. I can't think of a circumstance in which I've ever seen Cory make Topanga laugh.
Absolutely. But I think that two things. One, we are starting this Boy Meets World alternate timeline multiverse situation.
Yes, where they've been dating since they were kids.
Where, like, depending on the episode, they've known each other, or they've known of their attraction to each other since they were 6, according to him.
But later on, we find out it was when they were babies, and then there's another episode where they were on the playground or something.
Exactly. So this is the beginning of that. This is also the beginning of, like, what is it? I would call that bathroom door the room of requirement, because it's just like that bathroom door set, which in this episode is Feeney's office, but I believe in the next episode is the guidance counselor office, which at some point in time is the bathroom. It's the room of requirement. That that door literally is whatever we need it to be. And this is kind of where Boy Meets World's like, continuality is not our strong suit. We are using all of the elements that we have to tell the story that we need to tell.
Well, I also think that we're just entering a new phase of the boy and Boy Meets World, because what I saw from this episode was Cory not being goofy, not focusing on schemes, not focusing on baseball. He was as dramatic a romantic lead as we've ever seen him, sitting on the bed talking about his emotions, how he felt, and it was all very well acted by Ben, by the way. I thought he did a phenomenal job with it, seeming very sincere, seeming like I believed everything he was saying.
Mm-hmm.
And I just thought that this is just we're going to see so much more of that than we are going to see the Ben and the Cory that we've been seeing over the last 2 years, that I just thought that was the biggest pivot.
Yeah, but like I still feel like Cory in this situation, this whole situation with Topanga, I do not like Cory. And I say that because, first of all, when he goes to her place, he's like, I came here to get all my stuff.
Yep.
And she's like, what stuff? He's like, well, my jacket for one. So very petty and childish. And then he goes, and you have all my feelings. It's on her. The onus is on her. I gave you my heart. You didn't reciprocate it. Shame on you. This is not going the way that I thought it would be. And now I'm mad at you for not talking to me, which, by the way, again, it was something where she was like, meet me here so we can have a conversation, and he kind of pushed the issue.
Yeah, 100%. My issues with Cory in this episode was that he was, I'm going to say I love you, and I'm expecting you to say it back.
Yes.
I am going to say this to you, and I'm expecting you to respond and feel this way, and if you don't, I'm going to get upset with you. I'm going to get mad, and granted, Topanga, communication, not her strong suit in this episode. We can talk about that later.
Mm-hmm.
She could have handled some things differently.
Absolutely.
I can understand Cory's frustration, but Cory also was saying, this didn't go the way I saw it going, so for that reason, I'm upset at you.
Exactly, absolutely. I saw a meme the other day where someone was like, whenever guys say women are too complicated, what they mean is you're not fitting the trope I had in my head, and I'm mad at you for it. I had this archetype that I thought you would fit into. You're not fitting into any of these boxes, and that is frustrating to me. So you're too complex. And I definitely feel like that comes through in this episode.
One of the things I will have to say that I really aligned with Cory in, is something that definitely made a huge impression on me when I first saw the show, is Cory has a line where he's like, what's wrong with saying how I feel? If I meant it and I'm honest with it, Eli encourages this. I'm so on board with that. I thought that was a really, as a kid, it really, it made the impact that I think it was supposed to make, in which is, speak your truth. Don't care how your friends are going to respond to it. Don't care how people are going to react to it. Speak and own your truth, which is what Eli tries to...
Well, yeah, I think, honestly, when I think back on Boy Meets World, that's one of the kind of totems that I carry with me, is this authenticity, this screw the world, screw expectations. I'm doing what feels right to me. I mean, that's often seen even with Sean and Cory. You know, I mean, their bromance in general was something, it was so refreshing and something that people identified with because it fought expectations.
Yeah. And I think, saying, I'm going to do whatever I want is different than I'm going to say what is authentic to me. I think there is something like in the next episode when we get there, we see Sean kind of being really selfish. I'm just going to do whatever I want and do this.
Yeah.
Whereas Cory's not doing anything that's really going to affect anyone else. He's just voicing how he felt. And of course, he responded to it very shitty.
Yeah.
But I thought it was a very brave thing for the show to tackle in this way.
I just wish, I agree. It's just that it ends with him being rewarded. And I would have liked a little bit more conversation of, I don't owe you and I love you. Yeah. But the communication is what we needed to have.
I would have really preferred if the show had ended with Cory saying to Topanga what his definition of love is, and her responding in a way that's like, okay, I'm going to continue this relationship with you if that's cool with you, and I'm going to say I love you when I'm ready to say it. Something like that, where it's not like this, I need you to say it back to me in order for us to be together.
Well, I agree, but one of the things I kind of will give the show credit for is Topanga does not say it until she hears his definition. Because what she says is, he says, I love you. And she goes, we're 14. I don't even know what that means.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know what the word love means. And I'm not going to say something when I don't know what I'm signing up for.
And she essentially says, oh, that's what you think love is? I'm cool with that definition.
Yes, and that's what I like.
Yeah.
There's this redefining of what it means for you two. And it's like, if what you're saying is, our language does not have the adequate word other than love to express this. And I know that love also could mean this heavier, larger thing. But for me, it means simply this.
Yeah.
I'm okay with that.
And I think, honestly, this is a great lesson about like having a conversation where you say how you feel, but being more specific than using generic phrases.
Absolutely.
Because we see in this episode that love means different things to different people. And so having to dissect that and being like, what do you mean by that? I feel like it's healthy for people at any age to have that conversation.
It's so funny because one of the things I wrote down in my notes is words mean things.
Yeah.
And it's something that I say in my relationship all the time, where when my boyfriend and I are having a conversation, sometimes there'll be an argument, but we're not arguing. We're actually on the same page.
Sure.
We agree, but someone used a word or a phrase that meant something different to the other person. And sometimes we just have to trace back and say, okay, what did you mean when you said this word or phrase?
Yeah.
Because once you put it in a different light or once you expand on it, you're like, oh, I agree with you.
Sure.
We're on the same page. And I like that something I've seen a lot of just in research of being in relationships, and something that I think this episode does really good is, as a couple, defining your own terms.
Yeah.
And being like, there's the mass understanding, and then there's what works for us.
Sure. What did you think of initially how Topanga responded to Cory saying, I love you?
I was interested because I wanted to know what their response would be to that. You know what I mean? It's like, what are they giving as her motivation?
Yeah.
I think, personally, we're 14 is a legitimate concern.
I also think that, yes, I think when I first watched this episode, I was more on Cory's side of, well, she should be more honest. She should communicate more, because they do have a friendship that exceeds long. This isn't just some person she started talking to.
Yeah, absolutely.
So there was a part of me that was like, Cory deserves more than that. But as an adult watching this in 2019, I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, this 14-year-old girl doesn't owe this 14-year-old boy an explanation or anything.
Absolutely.
She can just feel this way.
I feel like if this was done now, he would have texted that to her, and he would have gotten the ... Nothing.
Yep.
You know what? Like, that's how I feel like it would work now.
Sure.
And that is its own sense of anxiety, and it's very similar. But I feel like it was very true to life, which is that one person is like, hey, I'm really enjoying what's going on, and another person's like, hey, I'm thinking about the future, and you're like, whoa.
Yeah.
I was like, that's actually a very common TV trope for why people break up, which is that you're here, I'm over here, and even though I was enjoying this, the idea that you're that committed to it is kind of scary, because I hadn't thought that far.
I will say, I think I mentioned this a little bit earlier, I was caught off by how comfortable they were together in their initial date scene. Like, they were flirting left and right, they were making out, they were doing all these things that we had never really seen them as a couple out and about like this before. We never seen them flirting like this.
Yeah.
It was them barely telling each other how they felt, and now we're seeing them make out left and right. Like, it was this turning point, and in a way, I felt like they both appeared so much older.
And maybe it's the show's way of saying this is going really fast.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like 0 to 60.
Yeah, probably.
I think that's giving them too much credit. But still, the only thing I wanted to say before we switch over to the B storyline is Amy and the sex talk. And this reoccurring theme of Americans being very uncomfortable with talking about sex with their children.
Mm-hmm.
Because, first of all, when Cory starts speaking, she makes an assumption, and she's going off of that assumption. She asks no follow-up questions, and you're like, this is the time to talk to your child.
Yeah.
Not to make assumptions and overreact and all this other stuff. It's very 90s. It's very what I expect. I'm not really blaming the show, but it's just, it did remind me of this idea of you need to talk to your children about sex because we are where we are with sexual education in this country because parents are like, oh my God, you're 14 and having sex?
Yeah.
I can't deal with that.
Yeah, it was just really interesting that, I mean, I thought it was kind of a funny joke, actually. I thought Amy's reaction to Cory saying I went too far with Topanga was a very standard mother response. But I know you're right. It is commenting on, but I thought it was an accurate comment.
Well, see, and that's, well, I guess, I was watching something earlier, and the character is a teenager and was talking about sex with their parents. And they were talking about, like, having sex and, like, yada, yada, yada. And my boyfriend was like, is that, he was like, I would not be comfortable with that. I would not want to have that conversation. And I was like, why not?
Yeah.
Like, would you, like, if they're having sex, they're having sex. It's way better that they talk to you about what they're doing. They don't have to go into graphic detail. That's not necessary. But, like, being like, hey, I'm sexually active, and this is what's going on, and this is where I stand. You want to have that conversation.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, they're going to get misinformation elsewhere.
Well, I think that we were fortunate enough to grow up with, like, 2 weeks of sex education in school, so we know a little bit more than I think Amy and Alan knew about the importance of communication in that regard.
Very true.
So I think it's standard 90s tropes. I don't blame it too much. One thing I do want to say about Cory and Topanga, I completely forgot before we move on, is that there was a big thing that I noticed in this episode. And that is, you know, Sean's like, you know, she's going to start making lists of all these things that she wants to do with you. And Cory, you could just start making your own list of things you want. And Cory's like, yeah, like thrift shops and antique shopping. And Sean's like, Cory? And Cory's like, I just want her to like my list. What we see in that little snippet is, I think, a grander reflection of Cory and Topanga's relationship, which is once Cory starts dating Topanga, he becomes consumed by Topanga, and they both begin this old man, old women trope of, like, we're not really into what all these young kids are into. We're much old, like, we're like an old married couple, and it stales out their characters completely.
It's actually really funny that you say that, because I would say that in some ways we see Cory and Sean go through the young couple ebbs and flows, you know, roller coasters in their relationship. But you're right, Cory and Topanga, because she's been part of the show since the first season, it's kind of grandfathered in, and they have old married couple problems, and very few new couple problems.
And that's part of the thing, is that, like, you know, they're into antique shopping and all these things that 14-year-olds probably shouldn't be into. And throughout the season, and this is one of the things I've noted about the season, is that, you know, they get in a rut where they're just kind of watching boring movies every night, and that eventually leads to their first breakup, and grass is always greener. So it's interesting to really, like, even in this beginning phase of it, that's a problem. That's one of those red flags that you don't realize is a red flag until after the relationship is over.
Yeah, you start off with being in the relationship and not dating.
Yes. And then once you start hanging out together and you're just like, oh, I mean, again, I'm over analyzing this moment, but it's only because I do see this being a tradition that at least we're going to see with this couple for the remainder of the season.
Absolutely. And I think that's important to note because, as you said, Boy Meets World kind of set the bar of what we expected at our age in relationships. Yeah. And if this is your bar, then you're like, oh, I got to get in the relationship, and then I have to be in it and consumed by it.
Well, you know, they always, you know, the pilot, episode 1, and also later on in Long Walk to Pittsburgh, they use this Romeo and Juliet comparison. And, you know, it's Romeo and Juliet were so consumed with each other and they were so obsessed with each other, and that's kind of like what they tried to build with Cory and Topanga. They're star-crossed lovers. They were meant to be, they've been a couple. There'll always be a couple, and there's something kind of boring about that. There's no like Luke and Layla. Like, are they going to get together? Are they not? There's no tension there. It's just like, yeah, that's it. They're going to be together.
Yeah, they're together, and then how do you again like? It's kind of like always with Cory and Topanga. How do you make this marriage last?
Yeah, how do you make this interesting? And I think that's why there's so much like we're gonna see so much of Cory and Topanga are together, but he's kind of focused on Sean's shit because he has nothing going on for himself.
That's a very good point. All right, before we wrap this up, I do want to talk a little bit about Eli.
Yep.
Because I think first of all, I like Eli in the elements where like his whole not wanting to talk to Cory and being like, I don't want a 14-year-old friend. I think it's someone who gets it.
Someone who calls out Jonathan for saying, hey, it's a Friday night. Let's go to where all my students hang out so that they can have personal conversations with me after hours. Yeah, maybe we should get this shit to go.
And Eli's like, no.
Yeah.
And then you see him kind of reluctantly not want to be involved, but also being like, you know what? This guy does seem to be hurting. Let's see if I can help a little bit.
Yeah.
And kind of take this advice. And I do like what he says about, again, all right, Cory, you heard what you heard, but does that sound like the truth? Do more. Investigate. Don't just accept what you heard at face value, which I think is great, which is like, if you don't know or if you don't like the response, ask more questions. Don't just be like, oh, this is what I'm seeing, even though I feel like there's something more there.
What I really liked is that what we heard from Eli was a response that is very different than the advice that I think Jonathan or Feeney would have given.
Absolutely.
And I like that we're getting a different perspective. Like, we're getting, I really like Eli's whole shtick of, like, truth and honesty in media.
Yeah.
And the fact that's a very 2019 thing to be able to distinguish truth in media.
It's so funny that you brought that up because part of my homework I'll get into, but it's totally tied to that. But this moment was me being like, whoa.
Yeah.
This whole truth in media, don't believe everything that you see. They have what they're going to show you, and then there's the truth. Like, I was like, this is sadly ridiculously relevant.
Brother's woke. He's been woke. But in general, like, I really liked the hiring process. Like, I loved Eli and Feeney going back and forth with each other. Eli has this almost like Damon Wayans Jr. type of vibe to him a little bit.
I can see that. For me, I think that I don't mind the introduction of Eli. There is something about him being like this arrogant kind of, oh no, I'm going to tell this person. It's like, no, I believe that Eli has gotten far in life by being someone who knows when to be on and when to be off.
Yeah.
And I don't believe that he would have just went into this interview guns blazing. But that, again, this is the introduction of Eli, so maybe he would, and maybe the more I get to know him, the more I'm like, no, that's exactly what he would do.
Thought it was interesting that we learned that the reason why Eli didn't have a job was because he got fired for pursuing a truthful news story that the broadcast did not want to air.
Exactly.
And the fact that he was a rebel in that way. He was a social justice rebel. And so we basically have AOC at the school right now. And I just feel like that's an interesting dynamic. So for that reason, I'm on board with Eli. I like his dynamic with Feeney. I thought he did really well counseling the kid. And I think that he serves a place in this world.
He does, but I feel like and this is my interpretation, I feel like the truth in media conversation felt forced. It felt like I believe him and what he's saying, and I believe the story and where it's at. I feel like the connection of truth in media and Cory pursuing the truth with Topanga seems like one of those reaches.
Well,
you know what I mean?
I will say that Eli and his truth in media and his media production class actually goes on to play some pretty big parts this season. And in this regard, I will say, think of him like the Defense Against the Dark Arts teacher.
No.
He comes in for a season, he rattles some shit up, but he plays like his truth in media thing in each segment.
But what I'm saying is, I believe that, and I look forward to seeing his character.
Yeah.
In this episode, not thinking about his arc as a character, in this episode, the connection of truth and media, like, this is what I see it is. Usually we have Feeney or we have Turner who are trying to take what they're teaching and it parallels what's going on in the kid's life.
So you're saying that Eli didn't teach anything to parallel?
I'm not saying that he didn't teach anything to parallel. I feel like they reached for that connection.
What I can't figure out is, look, I know she cares about me too.
Sounds like she's not being honest. There's more story out there. Go find it.
It's the you. She won't come back to me.
Yeah, maybe not. But without the truth, you got nothing. And without your jacket, well, you're just cold.
It's kind of like, it kind of feels like them being like, I don't know, GMOs used in strawberries. And it's like, oh, strawberries were also used in the peanut butter and jelly sandwich Cory gave Topanga. And it's just like, oh, do you see how this mirrors? And you're like, I mean, it does, but like, not really.
Yeah, I am curious to why they gave him this shtick. But I don't know. We'll see.
I like truth in media. I like what Eli brought to the table. I just think that the whole connection of search for the truth, don't believe the man, there's more out there, and a teenage girlfriend is being awkward around the word I love you. They don't really mesh well together.
It's almost as if Turner was like, hey, go talk to this kid, and he's like, all I know how to talk about is truth and media. Just say bits and pieces of that.
just repeat the words truth and media, and he'll get something out of it. Yeah, see, I would have loved if they even did like kind of something like that where Turner came back and was like, what'd you say? Honestly, man, I just kept repeating what I've been saying.
I didn't have anything else.
Exactly. Okay, but instead he kind of looks really good. Do you have anything else you want to bring up?
No, I think we covered everything.
Okay, so bruh moment. Do you have one?
Yeah, I think the bruh moment for me was how Eric emotionally manipulated his girlfriend to believe that he was in love with her for the convenience of not ending that relationship.
See, for me, the bruh moment was Cory's "we were meant to be" speech. It just feels, in my opinion, it feels very forceful to Topanga, and it gives her no wiggle room. You know what I mean? It's just like he kind of corners her, and it's just like, again, this is where I'm at. This is where I wanted. You didn't fulfill that, and because of that, you're a bad person.
If bros don't have to be negative, I will say the fact that Eli's introduction to these kids is him talking about fake news, I thought was kind of a bro moment.
I was going to say that too. No, absolutely. I love that you brought that up because my other one was going to be, and bros don't have to be negative. It's just things that you were like, oh wow, that's oddly relevant, out of place, or very relevant to today for a show that was recorded in the 90s.
Yeah.
Again, the whole fact that we have to do the argument of truth in media even now makes me sad.
Sure.
And how relevant it is. Do you have a Feeney taught me or anything like that?
My Feeney taught me is honestly what Eli's conversation with Cory about. Just be honest about how you feel. Like, as long as you're honest, you can't go wrong.
See, mine is my Topanga taught me is words mean things. You know, it's like needing to understanding the definition of what you're talking about in a relationship. I love that Topanga was like, I don't know, admitting, I don't know what this means, so help me get there.
Sure.
And I think that is real. For me, that's the biggest takeaway from this episode. In order for any relationship to succeed, you have to be on the same page and the same definition.
Open communication.
Okay, what grade are you giving it?
I'm giving this episode a B+.
Really?
I know that there's a lot of problems with this episode. I think it's very iconic. The jacket throwback, all of that stuff I found to be very heartwarming. I think it's classic, iconic Boy Meets World. It has its issues, but for the most part, I really enjoyed it. So.
Okay, I'm going to give this episode a C+.
Oh.
For me, it was messy. It was kind of all over the place. But I will say that the jacket throw made that a plus. I was like, the jacket throw is so iconic, and I was like, it is a good piece, and I really do like that we are having this conversation. I just think this episode could have been tighter and better.
Sure.
Okay, homework.
Homework. Oh, for homework for me is going to be the new Lizzo music video featuring Missy Elliott.
Yes.
Tempo.
Yes.
Because I think I broke the repeat button on that one. Yeah, the music video is just dope. Lizzo's dope. Missy's dope.
It's such a Missy music video.
And it just, like, I can't sit still when I hear that song.
Absolutely.
So,
We played it all weekend.
Yeah.
And I just really, really enjoyed it. The moment Missy comes out of that trunk, I'm just like, yes, Missy Elliott in her element. And I saw someone posted, like, Missy Elliott, how many tongue rolls do you want in this song?
Yes.
And I just
Lizzo's whole album is dope, and I'm sure everyone's heard it. But yeah, go listen to it. I've been a Lizzo fan for a few years, and just to see her be blowing up like this is really awesome.
It's so fantastic. Yeah. My homework is Spider-Man: Far From Home, and I chose that one because it has a very similar message of don't believe everything you see, truth in media, especially now that the environment that we're in and special effects and all this other stuff, without spoiling the movie, it is a very good follow-up piece to this episode in terms of what is the truth and finding your own truth.
Sure. Yeah. I have not seen it, so I can't find it.
I can't wait. I can't wait for you to see. It's actually, now that you have AMC Movie Pass.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, dude, that's not the issue. The issue is that you have to watch 30 movies to watch it ahead of time, and I'm like 14 behind.
Oh my god! Did you watch Endgame?
No, I haven't.
Why? What are you doing here?
I don't
know. Okay, so thank you for listening to Bro Meets World. Remember, you can find us on all of the places that you are currently listening to us, including Spotify, iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, Apple Podcasts, all of the places. Leave us a rating. We always appreciate it. You can also follow us on Twitter and Facebook at Bro Meets World, or email us at bromeetsworld@gmail.com. You can find me on Twitter at Ceej. That's XTRACEEJ.
And you can find me on Instagram at braverme @brava.me.
Okay, and remember to dream,
to try,
and to do good.
I'm gonna do some good, y'all.
And listen to Tempo. I like that song.